The grand ballroom of the Romano Palace glittered beneath enormous crystal chandeliers. Gold decorations covered every wall. Soft violin music floated through the air. Waiters dressed in white gloves moved between tables carrying silver trays loaded with expensive meals. The annual Romano Charity Gala was considered one of the most prestigious events in New York. Politicians attended. Millionaires attended. Celebrities attended. Everyone wanted to be seen there. Everyone wanted to shake hands with the man hosting the event, Dante Romano, the most powerful Italian mafia boss on the East Coast. A man whose name inspired respect, fear, and fascination. At 39 years old, Dante had built an empire that stretched across multiple states. He owned luxury hotels, shipping companies, restaurants, casinos, and countless businesses. To the public, he was a billionaire businessman. To those who truly knew him, he was much more dangerous than that. Tonight, however, Dante seemed distracted. As he sat at the center table surrounded by influential guests, his attention repeatedly drifted away from conversations. Something felt strange. Something he couldn't explain. Meanwhile, far from the spotlight, another story was unfolding. A story nobody important seemed to notice. At least not yet. Sarah Carter hurried through one of the servant hallways carrying fresh linens. Her feet hurt. Her back ached. Her hands were rough from years of hard work. For nearly 6 years she had worked as a maid inside the Romano estate. The pay was decent, but raising a child alone in New York was expensive. Every dollar disappeared almost immediately. Rent, groceries, school supplies, utilities, medical bills. The list never ended. Most months, Sarah barely survived. This month had been worse than usual. Her landlord had increased the rent. Her car needed repairs. And several unexpected bills had drained what little savings she possessed. By the end of the week, her refrigerator contained almost nothing. A few eggs, some milk, half a loaf of bread. That was all. She hated admitting it. But there had been nights recently when she went to bed hungry so her daughter could eat. The thought broke her heart, because her daughter deserved better, much better. 8-year-old Lily Carter sat quietly in a storage room near the staff quarters. She was reading an old library book while waiting for her mother to finish work. Normally, Sarah never brought Lily to the estate, but their babysitter had canceled unexpectedly. Sarah had no other choice. Lily was used to situations like this. She never complained, never caused trouble, never demanded expensive toys. In many ways, she acted older than her age. Years of watching her mother struggle had matured her quickly. Still, she was only a child, and children got hungry, very hungry, especially after an entire day. The clock slowly moved forward. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, then 9. Lily's stomach growled loudly. She placed her hand against her belly, trying to ignore the hunger. But the smell coming from the ballroom made it impossible. The scent of roasted meat drifted through the hallways. Fresh bread, chocolate desserts, cream-filled pastries. Every smell seemed stronger than the last. Her mouth watered. She hadn't eaten since early morning, and now the hunger felt painful. Eventually, curiosity overcame her. She quietly left the storage room, following the delicious aromas. Carefully, silently, she moved through the hallways until she reached a doorway leading into the ballroom. The sight made her eyes widen. She had never seen anything like it. Hundreds of guests, huge flower arrangements, golden decorations, massive tables covered with food. Enough food to feed entire neighborhoods, maybe entire towns. People laughed while sipping expensive drinks. Others barely touched the meals placed before them. Some took only a single bite, then abandoned the rest. Lily stared in disbelief. She couldn't understand it. At home, every piece of food mattered. Every crumb mattered. Nothing was wasted. Yet here people threw away meals without a second thought. The contrast felt unreal. She stood near the wall watching, trying not to attract attention. Her stomach growled again, even louder this time. A sharp pain shot through her belly. She swallowed hard. Then she noticed something. One table near the back had recently been abandoned. Several guests had left. Their plates remained, most of the food untouched. Lily looked around. Nobody seemed to notice. Slowly she approached. Her heart pounded. She knew she shouldn't. Her mother would be upset. But the hunger was overwhelming. She slipped beneath the large tablecloth, hidden from view. Safe. At least for the moment. Carefully she reached upward. A piece of bread. Half a sandwich. A few strawberries. Nothing excessive. Only enough to ease the hunger. Tears filled her eyes as she ate. Not because the food tasted good, but because she hated needing it. Across the ballroom, Dante Romano sat discussing a business merger. Several executives listened attentively. A senator sat nearby. Two investors waited for his opinion. Normally Dante controlled every room he entered. Tonight was no different. Yet suddenly something unusual caught his attention. Movement. Near one of the tables. His eyes narrowed. At first he thought it was an animal. Then he saw a small hand. A child's hand. Dante frowned. The conversation around him faded into background noise. He watched carefully. Then he saw her. The little girl hiding beneath the table. Eating leftovers. For several seconds he simply stared. Something inside him shifted. A feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Because what he saw reminded him of someone. Himself. 40 years earlier. A tiny village in Sicily. A young Dante sitting beside his mother. Hungry. Cold. Poor. His father had died. Money barely existed. Some nights they survived on bread alone. Other nights there wasn't even that. He remembered searching through market leftovers. Remembered pretending he wasn't hungry so his younger sister could eat. Remembered the shame. The embarrassment. The helplessness. Most importantly, he remembered how invisible poor people felt. How society looked right through them. As if they didn't matter. The memory hit him harder than expected. Suddenly, the powerful Mafia boss wasn't seeing a stranger. He was seeing a frightened child fighting the same battle he once fought. Nearby guests eventually noticed Lily too. A woman wearing diamonds gasped dramatically. "Oh my God." Another guest turned. Then another. Within moments, whispers spread across the ballroom. "Whose child is that? She's eating leftovers. Disgusting." "How did she get inside?" Several people laughed. Others looked horrified. One man actually pulled his plate closer, as though protecting it. The cruelty shocked no one. Most wealthy people preferred pretending poverty didn't exist. Lily felt the attention immediately. Her face turned pale. She froze. The bread slipped from her hand. Fear spread across her small face. And then disaster struck. Her elbow accidentally hit a crystal glass. The glass crashed onto the floor. Smash. The sound echoed throughout the ballroom. Music stopped. Conversation stopped. Hundreds of heads turned. Silence filled the room. Lily's eyes widened with terror. Security guards immediately started moving toward her. Guests began whispering louder than before. Everyone knew what would happen next. The child would be removed. Thrown out. Humiliated. Punished. Nobody expected anything different. Nobody except Dante Romano. Because as he watched the terrified little girl standing alone in a room full of wealthy strangers, he made a decision. A decision that would change both their lives forever. And leave every person in that ballroom completely speechless. The sound of the shattered crystal glass echoed throughout the ballroom. For several seconds, complete silence filled the room. Every guest turned toward the little girl. Every eye focused on Lily Carter. She stood frozen beside the table. Terrified. Ashamed. Unable to move. Her small hands trembled. The piece of bread she had been holding fell onto the expensive marble floor. Tears immediately formed in her eyes. She already knew what was coming. Children learn quickly when they grow up poor. They learn how people look at them, how people judge them, how easily they become unwanted. Lily had seen those looks before. At school. At grocery stores. In restaurants. And now she saw them again. Only worse. Because this time hundreds of wealthy people were staring at her. Whispering about her. Judging her. Mocking her. A woman wearing a diamond necklace shook her head. "This is unbelievable." Another guest frowned. "Where's security? How did she even get inside? She's ruining the evening." The criticism spread rapidly through the crowd. Nobody asked if she was okay. Nobody asked if she was hungry. Nobody asked why she had been eating leftovers. They only cared about the inconvenience, the embarrassment, the disruption. Meanwhile, Lily felt smaller and smaller, like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Then the security guards arrived. Two large men in black suits moved toward her. One of them spoke firmly. "Young lady, you need to come with us." Lily's breathing quickened. She looked around desperately, searching for her mother. But Sarah was nowhere in sight. The little girl felt completely alone. The guard reached toward her arm. And that's when a deep voice echoed across the ballroom. "Stop." The room instantly froze. Every person recognized that voice. The guards stopped moving. The guests stopped whispering. Even the musicians looked toward the center table. Because the voice belonged to only one man, Dante Romano. Slowly, calmly, the Mafia boss rose from his chair. The entire room watched. Nobody understood what was happening. Dante rarely involved himself in situations like this, especially not during important business events. Yet his expression was impossible to read. His dark eyes remained fixed on the little girl. The security guards stepped back immediately. "Mr. Romano?" Dante ignored them. Instead, he walked directly toward Lily. His polished shoes echoed across the marble floor. Each step increased the tension inside the room. The guests exchanged confused looks. Nobody could predict what would happen next. Lily stared at him. Her heart pounded harder than ever. Even she knew who Dante Romano was. Everyone in New York knew. Stories about him were everywhere. Powerful, dangerous, feared. And now he was walking straight toward her. When he finally stopped in front of her, the ballroom became completely silent. Lily couldn't even breathe. Dante looked down. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he noticed something. The girl's cheeks were thin. Her clothes were worn. Her shoes were old and slightly damaged. Signs most people never noticed. Signs Dante recognized immediately, because he had once worn those same signs himself. His voice softened. "What is your name?" The question surprised everyone, including Lily. She swallowed nervously. "Lily." Dante nodded. "And how old are you, Lily?"
8.
The guests looked increasingly confused. Why was he talking to her? Why wasn't he having her removed? Why was the most powerful man in the room treating her like a person? Dante continued. "Are you hungry?" The question shattered what little control Lily still had. Her eyes filled with tears. For several seconds, she couldn't answer. Then she quietly nodded. The honesty in that simple movement broke something inside Dante. Because he knew exactly what hunger looked like. And this child was starving. Not pretending. Not seeking attention. Actually hungry. The realization angered him. Not at Lily. At everyone else. At the hundreds of people standing around watching. Judging. Mocking. Ignoring. While a child searched through leftovers for food. Dante slowly looked around the room. His gaze swept across the wealthy guests. The same guests who moments earlier had laughed at her. His expression hardened. Interesting. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Dante continued. There is enough food in this room to feed hundreds of families. His voice was calm, but dangerous. And yet somehow a child is forced to eat scraps from abandoned plates. The silence became uncomfortable. Several guests lowered their eyes. Others suddenly became interested in their drinks. Nobody wanted to be the target of Dante Romano's attention. Because when he was angry, people noticed. Then Dante did something nobody expected. He pulled out a chair and placed it beside his own table. The table reserved for billionaires, politicians, executives, the most powerful people in attendance. He looked at Lily. "Sit." Gasps spread across the ballroom. Several guests nearly choked. One woman actually dropped her champagne glass. Surely, they had misunderstood. Surely Dante Romano wasn't inviting a poor little girl to sit at the most exclusive table in the room. But he was. Lily stared at him in disbelief. "Emmy?" "Yes." The child hesitated. Dante gently smiled. The first genuine smile anyone had seen from him all evening. "You belong at the table more than some of the people already sitting there." The room went completely silent. Several businessmen looked horrified. Others looked embarrassed. A few even looked ashamed. Lily slowly sat down, still unable to believe what was happening. Immediately, Dante signaled a waiter. The waiter rushed forward. "Bring her the best meal in the kitchen." "Yes, sir." "And dessert." "Of course, sir." "And anything else she wants." The waiter practically ran away. Nobody ignored Dante Romano's instructions, especially not tonight. As Lily sat there, staring at the luxurious table settings, she felt like she was dreaming. Moments earlier, she had been hiding beneath a table. Now she was sitting beside the most powerful man in the room. The transformation felt impossible. But the biggest shock was still coming, because across the ballroom, Sarah Carter had finally heard the commotion. And when she discovered her daughter sitting beside Dante Romano, her entire world was about to change. Sarah Carter was changing bed linens on the third floor when she heard the commotion. At first, she ignored it. Large events always created noise. Guests argued. Glasses broke. Someone always caused a scene. But then she noticed something strange. Several employees were running toward the ballroom, whispering excitedly, looking shocked. Sarah frowned. What happened? One waitress stopped briefly. Her eyes were wide. "You need to get downstairs." Sarah felt a sudden knot form in her stomach. "Why?" The waitress hesitated. "It's your daughter." The world seemed to stop. For a moment, Sarah couldn't breathe. "My daughter?" The waitress nodded. "She's in the ballroom." Sarah's face turned pale. Fear exploded inside her chest. She immediately dropped the linens and ran. Her mind filled with terrible possibilities. Had Lily gotten hurt? Had she broken something? Had security found her wandering around? Had a guest complained? The worst possibility hit her like a hammer. What if she lost her job? Sarah's heart raced faster. She couldn't afford that. Not now. Not ever. This job paid their rent, bought groceries, kept the lights on. Without it, they would have nothing. Absolutely nothing. Tears began forming in her eyes as she hurried through the hallways. Please let Lily be okay. Please. When Sarah finally reached the ballroom doors, she froze. The sight before her didn't make sense. Hundreds of guests stood silently. Everyone seemed focused on one location. The center table. Dante Romano's table. Sarah followed their gaze, and her entire body went numb. Lily was sitting beside Dante Romano, eating. Not leftovers. Not scraps. A real meal. An expensive meal. The kind of food Sarah could never afford. For several seconds, Sarah simply stared, unable to process what she was seeing. Then panic returned. She rushed forward immediately. "Lily." The little girl looked up. "Mom." Sarah grabbed her daughter, checking her for injuries. Fear filled her voice. "Are you okay?" Lily nodded. "Yes." Sarah turned toward Dante Romano. Her hands shook. Years of working in the estate had taught her one thing. You never cause problems for the Romano family. Never. Yet somehow her daughter had ended up at Dante's personal table. The embarrassment overwhelmed her. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Romano." Her voice trembled. "So, very sorry." Dante calmly looked at her. Sarah continued speaking quickly. "She shouldn't be here. I told her to stay in the staff area. I'm extremely sorry. It won't happen again." Many guests nodded. Finally, someone acting appropriately. Surely Dante would now dismiss them both. Maybe even fire Sarah. That seemed inevitable. But Dante surprised everyone. Again, he looked at Sarah, then at Lily, then asked a simple question. "When was the last time your daughter had a proper meal?" The question hit Sarah like a punch. She immediately looked away, ashamed, humiliated, unable to answer. Dante already knew. The silence told him everything. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Because she hated that question. Not because it was unfair. Because it was true. The truth hurt. The truth always hurt. Finally, she whispered, "We've been struggling recently." The ballroom remained silent. Everyone listened. Nobody had expected this conversation. Certainly not during a luxury charity gala. Dante leaned back slightly. "Tell me." Sarah hesitated. Years of pride fought against years of exhaustion. But something about Dante's expression felt different. Not judgmental. Not cruel. Just curious. Genuinely curious. So she told him. Everything. She told him about the rent increase. The medical bills. The babysitter who quit. The broken car. The endless expenses. The overtime shifts. The sleepless nights. The sacrifices. The loneliness. The fear. Most importantly, she told him about Lily. How her daughter never complained. Never asked for toys. Never demanded expensive things. How she pretended not to be hungry whenever food was scarce. How she always smiled anyway. By the time Sarah finished speaking, tears streamed down her cheeks. Several guests looked uncomfortable, because for the first time that evening, they were hearing reality. Not business. Not investments. Not profits. Reality. The kind many of them spent their lives avoiding. Dante remained quiet, his expression unreadable. But inside, memories continued returning. Painful memories. His mother. His childhood. The struggles he thought he had left behind. Suddenly, he understood something. Sarah wasn't lazy. She wasn't irresponsible. She wasn't looking for charity. She was simply trying to survive. Trying to protect her daughter. The same way his own mother once protected him. And that realization changed everything. Then something happened that nobody expected. One wealthy guest stood. A businessman named Richard Hamilton. Rich. Arrogant. Known for his lack of compassion. He looked disgusted. Mr. Romano. Dante slowly turned. Richard continued. With respect, this is a charity gala. Several guests nodded cautiously. Richard gestured towards Sarah and Lily. This is inappropriate. The ballroom became silent again. Everyone knew Richard was making a mistake. He simply didn't realize it yet. Dante stared at him, expressionless, dangerously calm. Richard continued speaking. These people don't belong here. The second the words left his mouth, the atmosphere changed. Even the air felt colder. Several guests lowered their eyes immediately, because everyone knew Dante Romano valued loyalty, respect, family, and children, especially children. Richard had just insulted all three at once. Dante slowly stood. The towering Mafia boss looked directly at the businessman. You think they don't belong here? Richard swallowed, but nodded. Dante took a step forward, then another. The room felt frozen. No one dared move. Finally, Dante stopped. His voice was calm, deadly calm. The woman you're insulting works harder in a week than you have in your entire life. Richard's face turned red. Dante continued. And the child you're judging has shown more courage tonight than most adults in this room. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Richard looked terrified now, because he finally realized his mistake. But Dante wasn't finished. He pointed toward the massive ballroom. Everyone here claims to support charity. His gaze swept across the crowd. Everyone here writes checks. More silence. But when a hungry child appears in front of them, his voice hardened. They laugh. The words struck like bullets. Several guests looked ashamed. Others couldn't meet his eyes, because they knew he was right. Every word. Then Dante turned back, toward Lily. The little girl had stopped eating. She looked nervous, confused, uncertain. Dante smiled softly. A rare smile. A genuine one. Then he asked the question that would change both their lives forever. Lily. She looked up. Yes, sir? Dante leaned slightly forward. What do you want to be when you grow up? The entire ballroom waited for her answer, and nobody could have imagined what she was about to say. The ballroom remained completely silent. Hundreds of wealthy guests watched Lily Carter. The little girl sat beside Dante Romano. A half-finished meal rested in front of her. For the first time that evening, she wasn't thinking about food. She was thinking about the question. The question nobody had ever asked her before. What do you want to be when you grow up? Dante's voice had been gentle, patient, as though her answer truly mattered. That alone felt unusual. Most adults never asked Lily about her dreams. Most were too busy talking about problems, bills, work, money, survival. Dreams were luxuries poor families rarely discussed. Yet Dante Romano waited. The most powerful man in the room was genuinely interested in her answer. Lily looked down at her plate, then back at Dante, and quietly spoke. "I want to be a doctor." The ballroom fell silent again. Several guests blinked. Others exchanged looks. A few even smiled. Dante himself seemed surprised. "A doctor?" Lily nodded. "Yes." "Why?" The little girl hesitated, then pointed toward her mother. Sarah immediately looked confused. Lily continued. "When I was 6, Mom got very sick." Sarah's eyes widened. The memory returned instantly. One of the hardest periods of their lives. Lily kept talking. "We didn't have enough money." The room listened carefully. The hospital bills were expensive. Her voice became smaller. "Mom cried when she thought I was sleeping." Sarah lowered her head. Tears filled her eyes. Lily continued. "I didn't understand everything." The child looked toward Dante. "But I remember a doctor helping us." Her blue eyes brightened slightly. "He stayed late. He talked to Mom. He made her feel safe." The ballroom remained completely still. Nobody wanted to interrupt. After that, Lily smiled. "I wanted to help people too." Silence. Beautiful silence. The kind created by truth. Not performance. Not wealth. Not power. Just truth. Dante felt something tighten in his chest, because he recognized genuine goodness when he saw it. And Lily possessed it naturally, despite everything she had suffered, despite the hunger, despite the poverty, despite the struggles. She still dreamed about helping others. That realization affected him deeply, more deeply than he expected. Across the room, several guests quietly wiped away tears. Even some of the businessmen looked emotional, because Lily's dream reminded them of something many had forgotten long ago. Hope. Dante looked at Sarah. "How are her grades?" Sarah blinked. "Her grades?" "Yes." Sarah smiled proudly. "Straight A's." The answer surprised many guests, but not Dante. He had expected it. Children like Lily often worked harder than everyone else, because they understood opportunity was precious. "She loves school," Sarah continued. "She reads constantly." Lily looked embarrassed. The ballroom laughed softly. A warm laugh. The first genuine warmth many people had felt all evening. Then Sarah's smile faded, because reality returned. "We just don't know how we'll afford college." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Immediately, she regretted saying them. She wasn't asking for help. She wasn't begging. She was simply being honest. But honesty sometimes felt dangerous, especially around wealthy people. Sarah quickly shook her head. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." Dante remained silent, his gaze fixed on Lily. Then he asked another question. "Do you really want to become a doctor?" The little girl nodded immediately. "More than anything." Dante smiled. A small smile, but a genuine one. And that smile made several people nervous. Because whenever Dante Romano smiled like that, something important usually followed. The Mafia boss slowly stood. The entire ballroom watched. Nobody knew what he was about to do, but everyone sensed something significant was coming. Dante looked around the room, at the billionaires, the politicians, the celebrities, the executives, the people who claimed to care about charity. Then he spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen." The room became silent. Every eye focused on him. "When I was a child," many guests looked surprised. Dante rarely discussed his past. Almost never. "I grew up poor." The admission shocked several people. Most knew pieces of his story. Very few knew the details. "My mother worked herself to exhaustion." His voice remained calm. "Some nights, she went hungry, so I could eat." Sarah's eyes widened, because those words sounded painfully familiar. Dante continued. "I remember what it felt like." The ballroom listened carefully. "I remember being invisible." His dark eyes moved across the crowd. "I remember being judged." More silence. "I remember being underestimated." Several guests looked uncomfortable, because they suddenly realized he wasn't just talking about himself. He was talking about Lily, about Sarah, about every struggling family society ignored. Then Dante looked directly at Lily and made a decision. A life-changing decision. One nobody expected. "I have a proposal." The room grew even quieter. Lily looked confused. Sarah looked nervous. Dante smiled gently. "Lily." "Yes. If you continue earning excellent grades." The little girl nodded quickly. "I will." Dante chuckled softly. "I believe you." The guest smiled. Then Dante continued. "If you continue working hard." The room leaned forward, waiting. "If you continue chasing your dream." His voice became firm. "Then I personally guarantee that every dollar of your education will be paid for." The words echoed through the ballroom. For several seconds, nobody reacted, because they couldn't process what they had heard. Then gasps erupted everywhere. The entire room exploded with shock. Sarah covered her mouth. Tears immediately poured down her face. Lily stared at Dante. Speechless. Completely speechless. The Mafia boss wasn't finished. Elementary school. Silence. High school. More silence. Medical school. The room gasped again. Everything. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "You mean?" Dante nodded. "Yes." The little girl burst into tears. Happy tears. The kind that come when hope suddenly becomes real. Sarah cried too. Years of fear. Years of struggle. Years of uncertainty. All crashing down at once. She couldn't speak. Couldn't think. Couldn't even breathe properly. Because the impossible had just happened. Her daughter's future had changed forever. The ballroom erupted into applause. Real applause. Not polite applause. Not social applause. Genuine applause. People stood. Cheered. Smiled. Even guests who had mocked Lily earlier now looked ashamed. Because they understood something. The little girl they laughed at moments ago had inspired the entire room. And Dante Romano had just given her something priceless. A chance. A real chance. But as the applause continued, Dante wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at Sarah. And, for the first time that evening, he noticed something else. Not just a hardworking maid. Not just Lily's mother. But a woman who had sacrificed everything for her child. A woman whose strength reminded him of someone. His own mother. And, in that moment, a new thought entered Dante Romano's mind. One that would change all of their lives forever. The applause seemed endless. Guests stood from their seats. Many wiped tears from their eyes. Others smiled warmly at Lily. For the first time all evening, the ballroom felt united. Not by money. Not by status. But by something far more important. Hope. At the center of it all sat 8-year-old Lily Carter. The little girl who had arrived hungry. The little girl who had hidden beneath a table searching for leftovers. And the little girl whose future had just been transformed forever. Yet while everyone celebrated, Dante Romano's attention remained elsewhere. His eyes repeatedly drifted towards Sarah Carter, the maid standing beside her daughter. The woman who had spent years sacrificing everything. The woman who reminded him of his own mother. And the more he watched her, the more he respected her. After the gala ended, guests slowly began leaving. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Security escorted important visitors. Employees started cleaning the ballroom. But Sarah remained frozen. The evening still felt unreal. Lily sat beside her, smiling nonstop. "Mom." Sarah laughed through tears. "What?" "We did it." The little girl threw her arms around her. "We really did it." Sarah hugged her tightly. For years she had prayed for opportunities, for miracles, for anything that could give her daughter a better life. Tonight, one had arrived, and it still felt impossible. A few moments later, a voice interrupted them. "Sarah." She immediately turned. Dante Romano stood nearby. Several security guards remained at a respectful distance. The powerful Mafia boss looked calmer now, almost thoughtful. Sarah straightened immediately. "Mr. Romano." Dante smiled slightly. "You don't have to sound so nervous." Sarah laughed awkwardly. "That's easier said than done." For the first time that evening, Dante actually laughed. A genuine laugh. The sound surprised everyone nearby. because people rarely heard him laugh. Dante looked toward Lily. The little girl was finishing her dessert, completely unaware that another life-changing conversation was about to happen. Then he looked back at Sarah. How long have you worked here? Almost 6 years. Dante nodded. And in 6 years you've never asked me for anything. Sarah seemed confused. I was hired to work. Exactly. Dante folded his arms. Most people spend their lives asking for favors. His eyes met hers. You never did.
Sarah didn't know what to say.
Because she never viewed herself as special. She simply worked. Every day. Every week. Every year. Whatever needed to be done. Dante remained silent for a moment, then asked something unexpected. What was your dream? Sarah blinked. My dream. Before life became difficult, the question caught her completely off guard. Nobody had asked her about dreams in years, maybe decades. Eventually she smiled sadly. I wanted to become an interior designer. Dante listened carefully. Sarah laughed softly. It sounds silly now.
No.
His answer was immediate. It doesn't. The sincerity in his voice surprised her. Sarah looked away. The dream didn't survive reality. Dante understood exactly what she meant. Some dreams were sacrificed so others could survive. Parents understood that better than anyone. Several minutes passed. Then Dante made another decision. One even bigger than the first. Sarah. Yes. I need someone. She looked confused. For what? A position at Romano Holdings. Sarah stared. The company employed thousands of people. Executives. Managers.
Specialists.
Professionals. What kind of position? Dante smiled. Director of Interior Design. Sarah almost laughed, then realized he wasn't joking. The color drained from her face. Mr. Romano. Dante. She ignored the correction. I don't have the qualifications. Actually, you do.
No.
Yes. Sarah shook her head. I haven't worked in that field. Dante remained calm. You studied it. She froze.
Completely.
Because almost nobody knew that. Years ago, she had attended college. Before money ran out. Before life became complicated. Before she became a single mother. Before dreams became luxuries. How did you know? Dante smiled. I read employee files. Sarah stared in disbelief. The most powerful businessman in New York had read her file. Personally.
Why?
Dante answered before she could ask. People matter. The simple answer stunned her. Nearby employees watched in shock. Managers watched. Security watched. Everyone listened. Because they knew something extraordinary was happening. Dante continued. You're talented. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. No one has said that in a long time. Then they've been blind. The words hit her harder than she expected, because deep down, part of her had stopped believing in herself. Years of struggle could do that. Years of survival could make people forget who they once were. Dante wasn't just offering a job. He was reminding her of the person she used to be. Lily suddenly ran over. What are you talking about? Dante smiled. We're discussing your mother's future. The little girl looked curious. My mom has a future? The innocent question broke everyone's heart. Sarah immediately hugged her daughter. But Dante answered first. Yes. A big one. Lily smiled.
Good.
Then she looked directly at him. The powerful Mafia boss. The man feared throughout New York. And asked the question nobody else would dare ask. Why are you helping us? The ballroom became silent again. Everyone wanted to hear the answer. Dante looked at Lily, then toward the enormous room, toward the chandeliers, toward the luxury, toward everything he had built. Finally he spoke. Because once upon a time,
his voice softened.
A little boy needed help too. Silence. Beautiful silence. The kind created by truth. Not power. Not money.
Truth.
And someone helped him. Tears appeared in his eyes. Tiny. Almost invisible. But real. So now it's my turn. 6 months later. Life looked very different. Lily attended one of the best schools in New York. Sarah worked at Romano Holdings. Her designs impressed everyone. Promotions followed quickly. For the first time in years, bills weren't terrifying. The refrigerator stayed full. The future felt bright. And every Sunday afternoon, Lily and Sarah visited the Romano estate for lunch. Not as employees. Not as charity cases. As friends. As family. One afternoon, Lily sat beside Dante in the garden. The little girl smiled. "When I'm a doctor, I'll help people too." Dante smiled back. "I know you will."
How?
"Because good people always do." Lily nodded seriously, then took his hand. The feared Mafia boss looked down. The child smiled. "You know." "What?" "You're not scary at all." Dante laughed loudly. The gardeners nearly dropped their tools, because they had never heard that sound before. Lily grinned, and for perhaps the first time in many years, Dante Romano felt completely at peace. Because wealth builds houses. Power builds empires. But kindness changes lives. And on the night a hungry little girl searched for leftovers beneath a table, 3 lives changed forever. "We're discussing your mother's future." The little girl looked curious. "My mom has a future?" The innocent question broke everyone's heart. Sarah immediately hugged her daughter. But Dante answered first. "Yes. A big one." Lily smiled.
Good.
Then she looked directly at him. The powerful Mafia boss. The man feared throughout New York. And asked the question nobody else would dare ask. "Why are you helping us?" The ballroom became silent again. Everyone wanted to hear the answer. Dante looked at Lily, then toward the enormous room, toward the chandeliers, toward the luxury, toward everything he had built. Finally he spoke. "Because once upon a time,"
His voice softened.
"a little boy needed help too." Silence. Beautiful silence. The kind created by truth. Not power. Not money.
Truth.
And someone helped him. Tears appeared in his eyes. Tiny. Almost invisible. But real. So now it's my turn. 6 months later. Life looked very different. Lily attended one of the best schools in New York. Sarah worked at Romano Holdings. Her designs impressed everyone. Promotions followed quickly. For the first time in years, bills weren't terrifying. The refrigerator stayed full. The future felt bright. And every Sunday afternoon, Lily and Sarah visited the Romano estate for lunch. Not as employees. Not as charity cases. As friends. As family. One afternoon, Lily sat beside Dante in the garden. The little girl smiled. "When I'm a doctor, I'll help people too." Dante smiled back. "I know you will."
How?
"Because good people always do." Lily nodded seriously, then took his hand. The feared Mafia boss looked down. The child smiled. "You know." "What?" "You're not scary at all." Dante laughed loudly. The gardeners nearly dropped their tools, because they had never heard that sound before. Lily grinned, and for perhaps the first time in many years, Dante Romano felt completely at peace. Because wealth builds houses. Power builds empires. But kindness changes lives. And on the night a hungry little girl searched for leftovers beneath a table, 3 lives changed forever.